Revesz in Boston. Well, I was in If Not Now, and I was gone for the summer that he was most involved, so we didn't really overlap all that much, but I think our paths crossed at some point. I can't really remember clearly. But yeah, when he went into hospice, I was, oh, I've met that person, but I don't know him very well. And I started going at first just to support my friends who were really close to him and having a hard time. Jordan, Parnell, and Mickey, and I guess those are yeah,
At the time you were living with Daniel.
that's true. Yeah. So probably Daniel as well. It was like a really warm space, and particularly once my winter break started and I had a lot of, I'm a teacher, so have the school calendar, and I had a lot of free time. I would go. At first, I only went when other people were there, but then I remember it was over that winter break that folks would start asking me if there was time that wasn't covered, that nobody would be there to go be the one there if there was just one other person. And yeah, it was kind of a funny mix of Emmet's childhood friends, his more if not now friends, and then his friends more from the disability justice and activism world. And so I also started to get to know some of the other people in that triangle. His sister Rachel and Kaden, and I can't really remember the names of his other New York friends, but I remember some of them not by name. And well, I met you there, I think, and Gavi, is that their name? There was this real commitment to making sure that he never had to be there alone. And his family was not, they were kind of intermittently around, but maybe not the folks that he always found most helpful to be around, and also didn't already kind of have this organizer orientation. It worked that a lot of us were knew each other through organizing, and I'm not sure exactly. I don't remember there being a document or anything about when he was going to be alone or not. So I'm not even sure how people figured out how to ask or, yeah, when to ask people to be there. But I definitely got some individual texts at times and then would make sure to know that when I had to leave, if I was the only one there, somebody to find somebody else who could be there. I feel probably mostly Jordan or Mickey. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's definitely true. Yeah, the just the mindset towards taking initiative and being responsible and on top of things and not feel had to hold the role alone, but just making sure that there was somebody else who could. It's funny because I didn't remember that until you texted me the screenshot, but yeah, I remember thinking at the time, even in the moment, knowing that we were doing a powerful act of organizing. And there were definitely times especially in the first hospice location, which was also, it was way easier for people to get to. In the second hospice location, it had to be driven to. So there was also then a whole new thing around organizing carpools. But oh, and also there was some organizing stuff at times around, this is more an answer to your last question, making sure that out of towners had places to stay. But I remember, especially at the first location, when also Emmett was more alert and awake more often, there were times that we would make art together. And I remember one of the times that I was alone with Emmett, he ended up being asleep pretty much the whole time. And I illustrated this poem for him and wrote a note to him on the back. Even at the last hospice location, I think even the week or two before his death, I remember another art making time where I ended up drawing little tattoo type drawings, but with color on both my hand and his hand. He was awake and wanted that. So yeah, I think just kind of both knowing that we had done something really powerful in terms of making sure he was never alone, particularly given how long he ended up being in hospice, which was much longer than anyone thought he would be. And maybe I had some specific ideas of putting some of that art in the zine. I think so. I feel like there was art on the walls, but obviously this was now many, many years ago, so I don't have as many clear memories as I once did. I'm curious about that. I have a picture, but I'm not sure if I have the physical thing.
המלך הגואל אותי מכל רע, יברך את הנערים, יקרב בהם שני. בשם אבותיי, אברהם ויצחק, ויגדו לרוב, בקרב הארץ. As high as my voice can go.
No, I taught in the Philly public schools, but here I teach in a private school. But I was sort of on the beginning of a journey of coming to terms with my own disability, and certainly being in that space was pivotal for me in that and just affecting me as a human. Certainly, teachers can learn a lot about better serving disabled students. Answer would be quite different if it were more recent. Mine was the one with the butterfly and it was the rainbow, and I don't remember who was the hearts. I drew. I think I asked him what he wanted, and I don't think he drew it. I think I drew it. Yeah, it was a funny experience to go start showing up to that space because of wanting to support my friends and then becoming friends with him in that space. And yeah, I was sad that I hadn't gotten to know him before. His life was all about being in hospice and orienting towards death. But I also feel really lucky that I ended up getting to know him quite well in that space. Because, yeah, it was my winter break, and then I went back to work for just a couple days at the end of my winter break, and then I ended up getting a long-term medical leave from my job because of my own disability stuff. And so, yeah, then I started spending a lot more time in the space, partly just because it was hard for me to go. Being a teacher is a very structured job, and then to suddenly go no structure. And but meanwhile, there was this other very structured thing happening, folks trying to make sure he had company and wasn't alone, and that the people keeping him company had company. The fact that that space existed as I was going through that transition was huge for me. And yeah, I remember one time at the first hospice location where I had been there, but then I had to leave for a couple hours and come back. And I guess I had been telling Emmett a bit about what I deal with, and I came back and he was, oh, I pulled up all this research he had researched some, I forget what it was exactly, but it was something that he thought would help me that ended up actually not being the right fit given my situation. But when I had left for whatever I was doing for those couple hours, he hadn't been, oh, I'm gonna look this up while you're gone. But it was just, I came back and there was this really generous surprise. Him, I think he was the first person who really saw me as a disabled person, which welcoming thing, and that he was really seeing me, whereas I think I kind of felt a lot of folks in my life and even still kind of turn away from that part of me, and he was really normalizing it for me, and this is okay. There's stuff that we can do about it. And so that really warm welcome, right as I was at the start of something that felt pretty scary. I hadn't thought that my disability would get bad enough that I wouldn't be able to work, and all of a sudden it did. And yeah, the fact that he was just right there to welcome me was huge. And yeah, he was really wise and graceful about his own transition into through hospice. And there was this one moment also in the first location, one time when I was there alone with him, that I think about a lot. He had asked me to, there was something with cups and his Gatorade and a straw, and because I guess he had a cup that he would drink from and then a cup that he would spit into, and he asked me for some help regarding that, and then I had messed it up somehow. I forget exactly how, maybe putting the cups back in the wrong place so that they might get confused. And I remember him being a little snappy and harsh about it. I'm really sensitive to whenever anyone is, especially then. I've gotten thicker skinned since, especially then was a really sensitive person when it came to people being even slightly snappy or harsh. And so I remember feeling the sting of it and being, oh, but I'm spending all these hours here. Yes, I made a mistake, but I don't know. I remember kind of having some hard feelings coming up in the moment. But then later, when I reflected on it now, years later, I think there's so much pressure on disabled people to just be always be kind to others about our disability, never make anyone else feel uncomfortable around how hard our requirements are, our accommodations are, and to just, yeah, always be nice and grateful, whatever help people might give us. But I think he really stood firm in, you actually don't have to do that. And he powerfully modeled for me. And I think about that model now that I'm much more comfortable with the side of myself, the part of my identity that involves disability. Yeah, it's okay to actually be a little harsh with people, make others feel discomfort in moments around the support that they're giving us, because so often we're not getting the right support and we don't just have to play nice about it. Showed me that in his choice to lean into that piece of himself as something that could be a source of strength or something to be embraced, that if you lean in that way, you can find and build a really powerful community. And I was certainly, yeah, very moved by the level of community that he had built around disability. And yeah, seeing other folks who were embracing their disabilities more, not trying to hide them from the outside world or just fit in and appear normal. That was the first time that I had seen all that in as concentrated of a way. I mean, it was hard to be alone, be more isolated from others in a time when we are still really processing the intensity of that experience and trying to work through our grief at losing him. But in other ways, I think because of that shared experience, there was this network that we had built. And yeah, I mean, I was very, it's hard to say sometimes what would have been different or not. I was very COVID cautious and took a lot of precautions, understanding both being afraid for myself and understanding I'm not immunocompromised. I'm not high risk for serious COVID, but knowing that there could be folks anywhere who were, I feel I probably would have been that even if not for meeting Emma and that experience, but it's hard to say. But yeah, I think yes, it was harder to be isolated in that moment, given what we had all gone through, but also I certainly was less lonely than I would have been because of what we had built. And I remember being in lockdown and doing the art site Zoom call with some friends a couple times. Because, yeah, I remember the first year we did that. I remember the second year we did that. Yeah. So I moved to Buenos Aires in February of 2020, and I thought I was going to be there for a long time. And then I was only there for 5 weeks. I just was ready for a change in my life. My dad's from there. I wanted to, I have a cousin there I'm really close to, and she had a toddler who I hadn't really spent much time with. And she helped me rent a room from this 83-year-old granny neighbor of hers who had a tiny spare room with a tiny twin bed in it. And so I was just down the hall and got to hang out with her and her baby a lot and was volunteering at a school and then doing tutoring to have some money. Yeah, at first I what didn't want to come back because it was a big deal for me emotionally to gather the courage to move that far away. Even though I have family there, I still was leaving a lot of people behind and it felt a really big leap for me. I'm not somebody who that's a small thing for. So I really wanted to stay. And then I decided at the last minute after there were no longer any flights from Argentina allowed into the US that I wanted to come home. And luckily I was able to get home, but it was a little complicated. Their lockdown was way more strict than ours. You couldn't, in the city, you couldn't go on walks outside. That would have really driven me crazy. So I was glad to not be there. Certainly still think about it all. I would say the sharpness of missing Emmett has faded, especially because I only knew him for 3 months really well. It's kind of gotten lost. When I was in high school, I lost a close friend, and I remember thinking a lot about that friend while I was in that space with Emmett and thinking what it would have been like if I had known that I was going to lose that friend and what I would have wanted to say to him. And yeah, so it was, and there were many people that I actually lost as a young person, but that one was the most intense. And I thought about him a lot while being in hospice. And I think after the sharpness of the stuff that was specific to missing Emmett faded, in a way it kind of got folded in with all the other people that I lost as a young person. And so now when I feel the grief, it's kind of that collective grief rather than as specific. And for a while, I mean, I got very close to Caden while being in hospice, and for years we talked every day. Now we don't. We're still in touch sometimes, but yeah, sometimes when I'm missing him, I'm just also missing that connection and the closeness that I had to him for many years. Yeah, I carpooled definitely with Jordan and with Davi a number of times because I'm not sure what pronouns they use now, but they definitely didn't have a car. Jordan and I both had cars, and with Caden, who didn't have a car, and probably Mickey, and I'm sure others, but it's hard to remember. And I guess there was also, wasn't there also another, was there actually a very short intermediary hospice place. Am I misremembering that? I thought there were other, or maybe there was a different one he was considering but didn't go to. Certainly would have for me because I would have never really gotten a chance to know him. I remember my friends organizing it or helping with it, but at that point, that was before I started going to hospice, and I had only met him once or twice, and so it didn't feel appropriate for me to be in that space. But then I started going to hospice after, because I think that was before my winter break started. Yeah, I remember the setup of which one? I remember the setup of both. The first one felt more a hospital room, in that it was like there was a lot of white or light colored tiles and linoleum in the walls. The bed was white and the lighting was brighter in a hospital room. And there was a little waiting area where kind of central lobby on that floor where I think I would sometimes go to make tea, or maybe there was a mini fridge that I would put things in there. And there wasn't another bed in the first one. There was something pushed against a wall that I know Caden slept on, but I don't think it was really a bed. And yeah, there was enough space for us to kind of have like a bit of a circle of chairs there. And then in the second one, it didn't feel like a hospital room at all. It was more darker colors, if I'm remembering correctly. Maybe a rug or a carpet. And there were two beds in the room. Yeah, I liked that's kind of the story I told of him kind of being a little harsh with me, and when I messed up that thing. I liked that about him, that he was always brutally honest. It was his first year of rabbinical school or his second? Right, and I remember thinking about that connection, but it also being different in the, obvious raising awareness for AIDS and getting the government to deal better with AIDS was more of a hot button collective issue than what Emet died of is quite rare. And the teaching job I had before this one, I left for a number of reasons, but I think the the straw that pushed me to really get serious about applying to other schools was that they abolished any COVID policy. And I can't work here if you've abolished any COVID policy. In response to what you were saying earlier about Emma wanting us to connect with each other, I remember in the last week before he died, I mean, he was no longer really mentally aware, present in typical ways. But I think Rachel saw Aiden put his arm around me or something, and then and made some comment about, kind of similar to what you were saying of, yeah, Emmett wanting connections across the different groups, from the organizers to his childhood friends to his friends from the disability world. And from the organizer standpoint, I mean, I remember in terms of, if not now's support, after there was something that, if there was a training that, if not now, national wanted to happen in Philly that spring. And at first I had been speaking to folks to help with that, but then had to devote most of my organizer energy to the hospice space, and also did a reality vibes check with, because it was so many of the Philly core, if not now, leaders who were pouring all any organizer energy we had into hospice with Emmett. And so I remember ending up going back to the national folks and telling them, hey, I don't think we're going to be able to help you with this. We're just really at low capacity right now. But it was accepted generously, that boundary. And then once Emmett died, I think they, if not now national, set up something where other cities each did a collection pool of money that then would be the money for takeout for Shiva that night. And
Mm.
I think other cities ended up covering all or most of the nights of Shiva. also sending along a lot of messages of support. I might have the city's spreadsheet somewhere if you wanted me to, if it would be helpful. I'll try to look. I'm not sure I'll be able to find it, but I have an image in my head of what the spreadsheet looked like with the different cities signing up. I guess that's what I wasn't remembering. How did we know when he was going to be alone or not? You have those spreadsheets linked. Yeah, I'm sure you could also talk to a more computer science savvy person who could figure out how to embed them or something. I remember that. Have you been in touch with random video guy? Whatever happened to what he was working on? Have you read Wayward Lives, Beautiful Experiments? I think it could work well. I don't know if you need any sort of theoretical framework for this project, but I think the way that you're approaching the project, I read it in grad school for a class where we had some disability readings. It's not really about disability, but I think you would like it. Sadia Hartman, I don't think she's disabled. She was approaching it more about, I think her primary focus was on sex workers of color. Certainly, there's a lot of parallels. And the way that she talked about approaching an archive a different in a different way than has typically been the blueprint for archival engagement. Do you remember, can I ask one more question? Do you remember what from the living funeral is there archive is there? I'm trying to remember who was the fourth person who ended up carrying the coffin into the crematorium.
I know I was one of them.
Oh, then I guess it was you. I remember I was there and I remember I thought Mickey and Jordan were there. I mean, I thought it was kind of a powerful affirmation of all that we had just done, because I guess more typically it would be blood family members who would do that. And instead, it was those of us who had really shown up to and for hospice experience. And I remember feeling a part of me feeling like I shouldn't be a part of that because I didn't know Emmett before and being honored by his decision that he wanted me to be included because yeah, especially when I went on my medical leave, really spent a lot of time there and got close to him. And, but yeah, I think mostly it just felt like a powerful affirmation of that space that we had created together, how that we were so committed to it and that was affirmed. Yeah, and I remember feeling kind of cold at times in because at first I had shown up out of a desire to support my friends who were being really affected by this experience of seeing Emmett die, being in hospice with him. And then, of course, I developed my own friendship with Emma and developed new friendships. But I remember times of kind of feeling pulled, supporting my friends versus honoring the emotions that then it started to bring up for me. And then, of course, also support for Emma. Yeah, a couple of us had gone to get dinner and got back a couple minutes after he died. And I think in that moment, I switched into support for others because Caden was very affected and I was worried about him. Was it clear in the moment that he had died? Because wasn't he kind of asleep anyway? And
Well, we noticed that he wasn't breathing.
right, because I guess at that point he breathed pretty audibly.
Yeah, and that we also noticed that his chest wasn't moving.
Right. Yeah, I remember folks who were in the car with me coming back from dinner. I think a couple people felt guilty that we weren't there for the exact moment of his death, and I get that that's an important transition moment, but it was also kind of you said like, that wasn't the moment that we were really needed for. We were there. It was
Right.
such a gradual and slow process, and we were there for so many moments mattered more to him. Yeah, and we had only been gone an hour. And I think those tattoos that we drew, I think there were
They were
still
still,
on
yeah.
him. I remember feeling sad as mine was fading. Well, thanks for talking with me. Keep me posted about next steps and stuff. Yeah, I'll There's a couple places where I might actually have the physical copy of what I sent you. So if I do, I'll send that.